My name is Vedang Manerikar. It's hard to pronounce. Talk to me after the talk. Okay, let's get started. I have a lot of slides to rush through, so I'm going to rush. But please feel free to ask any questions and help me do a better job. How many people have used Claude Desktop or Cursor and have installed at least one MCP server? Show of hands, please. Okay, not many people. Okay, cool. Then we'll go slower through the first part of the talk, where I explain a little bit more about what MCP is. Okay. How many people have written their own MCP server for anything, even if it's a toy project? Okay, cool. And then, yeah, completely unaware of what MCP is what looks like the crowd is. So that's totally fine. Welcome to the AI world, guys. Okay. So very, very briefly, basically, the MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. And it's a protocol that Anthropic has designed, and it's essentially the way that people explain it is that it's a standard for AI applications to access the external world, which raises the question, why not just use HTTP? But that's not how I like to explain it. This is a better explanation, which is that it solves the M-into-N integration problem. I'll be talking more about this throughout the talk. How many people here are aware of Language Server Protocol, LSP? Heard of it? Yeah, cool, great, right? So MCP is just LSP. We can just like compare that, and that's the comparison that I'm going to go through in this talk and try to convince you that it's a great idea. This is the M-into-N problem. Essentially, if you think about what the USB does, it solves that problem. You don't have to write protocols for every single thing that's out there. You write to a standard, and then that standard is implemented by everyone. So it becomes an M+N problem instead of a M-into-N problem. What I like to tell people is that Model Context Protocol is a standard for a baseline AI UX, right? So how do you design an application in this AI-enabled world? The UX is what it is helping you think about, not access to the external world or whatever. And I'll get more into that as we go into the talk. Just quickly to show you a little bit about what MCP is. My favorite MCP servers are Playwright, WhatsApp, and iTerm. Playwright gives Claude Desktop access to browsers and to browser automation. WhatsApp gives it access to my WhatsApp chats. And in India, basically, there's no other form of communication that works other than WhatsApp. Everybody is on WhatsApp, so this is a huge benefit for me. And iTerm lets Claude Desktop run anything and everything on my MacBook. So some example prompts, I could put this in Claude Desktop, summarize top articles of HN in the last week. And it'll open up Playwright, it'll open up the top posts of HN, it'll read all of them, it'll summarize them for me. I use this for the hotels also. So suggest hotels for me to stay at, and it found the right hotel by looking at where reClojure is happening, finding hotels near it, walking distance, things like that. Same for WhatsApp, we'll just quickly go through these again. I like WhatsApp a lot because I'm part of a bunch of groups. As a consultant, I'm part of a bunch of groups where there's a lot of chatter that happens, but I'm not really interested in the chatter. I just want to see if there are any leads that I should follow up on. So I just tell Claude to read all of my chats and give me any actionable leads, and it does a great job of that. Same with iTerm. For example, I can download all of the videos of reClojure. Claude will do that for me, and then it'll tell me how much space this has taken and stuff like that, fun automation stuff. Think about if you enjoy automating your life on the laptop or the desktop, like I do, then you should absolutely look into MCP and Claude Desktop immediately. Right now, that's the only thing that I use it for. I don't care if that's the only thing everybody in the world eventually ends up using it for, because it makes me really productive and I love it. A quick demo, let's see.
Good morning, reClojure folks. I'm recording a demo so that hopefully we don't have demo birds during the talk. And what we're going to do is we're going to demo this MCP server, which is powerful prompts. And this server is a prompt server. It's providing prompts rather than tools. And prompts are saved, giant prompts, basically saved in a quick name so that I can refer to them quickly. We're going to demo a prompt called EVM sort. EVM stands for evidence, balance, and magnitude. What are the best cafes to work from in Farrington? I want a good view, and I want to be able to work undisturbed. So this is the full prompt. The question was added in here, but there is a bunch of other things that it is telling Claude to do. Oh, one more thing before we enter. Use Playwright if possible for doing the searching online. So I'm asking it to use Playwright so that we can maybe get a demo of tools also. So you can see that it's calling out to Playwright, browser navigate, and it's launched a Chrome window, and it's going to Google to do a search. Let's see what else it's doing on Cloud Desktop. Yeah, so it ran a search, and there you go. So it's filling some stuff out, best cafes to work from, Parental London, so on and so forth. It's doing a bunch of things. We are going to speed through this demo as you can see. Okay, so here we are, and we can see that it has given me some options that I can pick based on some searching that it did, and gave it a score from a bunch of different sites. And it's giving me some balance assessment about why it thinks this is a good choice, and giving me a bunch of other details in the EBM part of it, the magnitude assessment part of it.
Okay. So in the interest of time, I recorded that video instead of like relying on the internet here. What you saw there are the two most popular uses of MCP, prompts and tools. Tool is what everybody talks about when they are shitting on MCP and saying that, oh, it's just HTTP, right? Because you're essentially just calling out to an API. And yeah, that's one way of thinking about it. Prompts are another part of the protocol where you can just save your complex queries so that you don't have to type the same thing again and again and again, which is what I showed there. Like that was a really small query, the EBM sort, but I've written pages longs of prompts, which I can then save and then just reuse with simple, like just quickly type it back in. Okay, so this is what you should know about MCP, that tools are not all that it covers. There are actually a bunch of things: tools, prompts, resources, routes, and sampling. I don't know that the screenshot is very visible, but you would see that almost all of the hosts today implement tools, but nobody covers everything else. Some of them cover resources and prompts. Not a single host covers the routes and samplings part of the protocol. And we'll go through what these are. And how you should think about them when you're building these hosts. Okay, so talking about MCP and LSP for a bit, right? MCP is very, very heavily inspired by LSP. This is a screenshot from their website, and they acknowledge that as well. It's essentially the same idea. It's based on top of JSON RPC, and it's meant to be a presentational protocol, right? A presentational bidirectional protocol. And what does that mean? Okay. So what was LSP? For those of you who may have forgotten, it was basically where VS Code said that, you know what, you are making the language, you make a server for what are the things that the language can do, right? For the formatting of the language, the linting of the language, refactoring inside the language, doing some other sort of like fixing your imports. All of these are actions that the language server can now do for you on your project, right? So VS Code as an editor implemented, so VS Code is what is called the LSP host. It implements something called the LSP client, which is a small bit inside VS Code which understands the LSP protocol. And it is also bundled with a bunch of LSP servers. So if you start a Rust project, you're starting Rust Analyzer. If you start a Python project, you're starting something else, Pyrite, right? And all of these VS Code knows about. Now, somebody like me on Emacs, I have to do all of this work manually, but these things come bundled in any of the major editors today, right? And so tomorrow, if I decide that I'm going to create a new programming language, I have to write my own LSP for it. Otherwise, it's not even going to take off, right? You can look at any new programming language that has happened after, say, 2017, 2018. They've all had to have LSP from day one. Okay. Similarly, MCP is Anthropic's masterstroke for Cloud Desktop. So what they're saying is Cloud Desktop is the default de facto implementation of what MCP should be. The desktop application is the host. They bundle an MCP client inside it, and everybody else is writing MCP servers right now. Eventually, you can think of a world where all of these applications, desktop applications, which are AI applications, will actually have all of these things bundled in. They'll have MCP clients bundled in, they'll have MCP servers bundled in for the right task. So you can imagine the new age Excel or the new age presentation software that comes up will have all of these tools built in. Okay. Maybe you remember this, maybe you don't, but LSP was not enthusiastically welcomed by the community. Okay, I was on the other side of the debate in 2016. This talk is actually called "Preventing the Collapse of Civilization." It's by Jonathan Blow. You might have heard of it. And in that, he has a slide called "LSP is the devil." You might not be able to read it, but that's what that slide says. LSP is the devil. And on the left are my notes from that talk where I loved it. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Why do we need all of this, right? Because I was using Emacs and I had all of these things figured out inside Emacs, right? I was using CLJ refactor and LDoc and Condo and a bunch of these things which I had set up myself lovingly, right? And I was like, this is just stupid. Why are we doing this? Why are we introducing a distributed system on my local laptop instead of just using libraries? And yet, LSP is a fantastic development for everyone. Today, I think we can agree to this, right? Nobody's going to say, though, this was a bad idea, even if at that time it wasn't really enthusiastically embraced by everyone in the beginning. Why? Because it's an improvement for what the baseline is supposed to look like. Tomorrow, if you are creating a new editor, you are creating a new programming language, you are going to have to write these bits. Nobody is going to accept your new editor if these things are not supported out of the box. Nobody is going to accept your new programming language if these things are not supported out of the box. Most developers don't need to think about this. They don't need to know about any of this tooling. They don't know about Clojure LSP. They don't know about CLJ Condo. They don't know about CLJ FMT. They don't know any of these things. They just happen automatically for them, right? And that's a good thing. That's a fine thing. It's less number of things for them to learn. Most developers probably don't know LSP today. If you ask anybody who's starting today, they probably don't know what LSP is, and that's probably what's going to happen in the future for MCP. They'll never know. It's just something that works internally inside the system. So I would ask that you reframe your thinking about MCP in terms of LSP. It improves the baseline expectation from hosts. So anybody who makes the new Claude desktop, tomorrow if OpenAI comes up with their own application, or if some Cursor comes up, Windsurf comes up, bunch of these other tools come up, they are going to support this protocol because that's the baseline expectation of being able to do certain things. And it improves the baseline expectations from the models. So I don't know if you have used a lot of LLMs or you have written a lot of agentic style code, but Google's model, Gemini, used to do a completely different thing for function calling. OpenAI used to do a completely different thing for function calling. Anthropic used to do a completely different thing for function calling. If you had to write a code where you had to support either of these, like multiple of these options, you had to support all of these things. And now the newer ones, this is Qwen 3. Qwen 3's announcement post itself from a few weeks ago actually says that we support MCP in the training itself. So our model now understands that this is the language if it wants to do, say, searching on the internet or invoking some other tool or doing some action, then this is the language that the foundational model should use. And if you have to take one thing away about like what LLMs are, they are simply an autocomplete engine. So having this baked in is good. So they can just autocomplete the correct tokens and everybody can then just benefit from their tooling just working with different providers. Okay, so yes, the use of MCP today is essentially just like HTTP, and yes, there's no doubt most of the 99% of the stuff out there is just calling APIs, but LSP is not meant to be used over the internet. LSP is bidirectional and presentational, meaning that it's a communication between the client and the server on both directions, and the protocol itself has presentational aspects to it, right, which hopefully I have a screenshot for. I don't know if this screenshot is visible. Clearly, it's not. It's a pretty shitty screenshot. Sorry about that, guys. But in the red box is the API that's defined by MCP right now. I don't know why it sucks this much. It looks really nice on my laptop. But that API there is tools list, tools call, prompts list, prompts call. It's a very simple API. And on the right-hand side is the API defined by LSP. Right? And the API defined by LSP has things like text document rename, text document hover, text document formatting, text document range formatting, so on and so forth, which are presentational things. Something is happening inside the editor, and the protocol talks about it from the point of view of the UX. Oh, if this happens, do this. If this happens, do this. If you hover over the text, this should happen. If you do some formatting change, this should happen, things like that. Okay. So this is the perspective that I would like you to approach MCP with. I wanted to better understand the possibilities of what this meant for AI-enabled UI applications, which is why I wrote mcp-Cljc SDK. I implemented the entire protocol. I would love to discuss this with you, and I'll be giving a few ideas if time permits also. So prompts, okay? So prompts are, you saw them in the demo. This is what that looks like. So on the top is the prompt definition. The argument it takes is the question that I want to ask. There's a short description for the UX, like I said, presentational. So the description is shown in the UX when you pick the prompt. The name of the prompt is EBM salt, and this is the prompt. So this prompt is small enough to fit in the screen, which is why I chose this. But this prompt could be like a giant wall of text, and it wouldn't matter. And this is the implementation of the server down there. So the server is reading the prompts from the Eden file, and then it's just putting them there. So there's a name to the server, a version to the server, and prompts. And that's all that this particular server supports. It could have had tools and resources also, but since I don't use them in this particular implementation, I have not defined them there. Then there's a small check about whether the prompt is valid or not using specs. And then there's a small check whether the entire server spec is valid or not, again using specs. And if this is, then just return it, and I can show you how it runs also. Let's go there. Yeah. So this is as easy as it is if you're writing your own server. Just define a data spec and give that spec to the IO server to run, which starts an STD IO server. Okay. Prompts are user controlled. This is a presentational aspect of it which I wanted to like drill into, meaning that as the user of the application, in this case Claude Desktop, tomorrow it could be Cursor, or it could be your own special presentation software that you're writing, the user will pick the prompt they want. I picked EBM sort, I could have picked some other prompt from a drop down or from an autocomplete or from wherever, right? But controlled by the user. Okay, tools. So this is how you define tools. So this is the server spec that you're seeing. This is a MCP server called VegaLite, which I wrote. It gives the Claude Desktop access to create diagrams using VegaLite. And the tool, there are two tools, save data and visualize data. So save data just lets the host save some data inside memory, and visualize data runs a command line called vlconvert to visualize that data. If we look at the actual function, so this is the actual function, which is the visualize data definition. And this is as defined by the spec. So right now what I've done is I have not thought very deeply about this. I have just directly taken what the spec expects and given it as a map, right? So you just define it as a map. There is scope, lot of scope for improvement here, but I did not want to overthink the API before I understood enough of the shape of the problem. So this is it, exactly as the spec defines it. You write it like this, give it a handler, and that handler will execute that code when Claude Desktop invokes this particular tool. And the handler is a simple function which is here on top, which is just reading the spec and running some code, running a command line code against it. So as you can see, very, very like straightforward, nothing complicated, simple functions which are giving Claude Desktop the power to do these things. Tools are model controlled. So this is interesting in that the model, which is the LLM model, in Claude Desktop's case, it's Anthropic. In some other like client application that you're writing, it could be anything. It could be OpenAI, it could be Quen, it could be any of these other models. The model says that, okay, this is the tool I want to invoke. So when we start a conversation with a model, we say that, look, you have access to these many tools, hundreds of tools. And then the model says that it looks like I would like to use this tool. Please invoke this tool for me, and then give me what the response of that tool is. So the model is deciding when to invoke these tools. Then we have resources and resource templates. We are all used to special URIs, right? So think special URIs, and the application knows how to deal with these special URIs. A great example of this actually is our demo video. I don't know if you noticed this. I launched the demo video from a link like this, right? So this is Emacs's way of saying that open this file using the system defined application, right? And this is something that me as a user of Emacs gets to decide. So how does that happen? So I could have linked to a file like this. See, these are all the, in the bottom you can see, these are all the things that Emacs supports, org mode rather supports. And if I choose file, it also gives me some UX for which file I need to choose, right? So this is all part of the application, which in this case is Emacs. The application is saying that, okay, for the file type, file colon, this is the completion style that I'm going to provide, right? And similarly, you could have different completion style for different types, for HTTP, EWW, attachment, and a bunch of other styles that that Emacs defines. So similarly, a resource is provided in MCP as something that the host application can decide what the UX is around and what it means. And the provider or the server will just know how to deal with this. So the server will know that, okay, if I see a link like this, this is what I should do. What do they look like in Clojure SDK? Again, this is like the goal here is to get the code to fit on the slide. So that's why it's so simple. It's not entirely, it's not necessarily a great representation of what a resource should be. But you can see that the example server spec has one tool and one resource, and on top of that, we have defined the resource, which is simply just reading a file in this particular case. In fact, it's not even reading a file, it's hard-coded. But you could imagine some logic there which would say that this is what this resource means. Prompts can ask for resource templates. This is an example where I use that. So standardizing resumes when applying for jobs is something that I don't want to do again and again. So I defined a format for it, which is in the resume markdown template, which is a resource. And I defined an example resume using that format. And then I'm giving it some resume, either mine or somebody else's, and some job posting. And I'm saying, please create the resume that I want, right? Now, this is done using a command line tool in the pre-MCP days. That command line tool is called LLM. I did not get the time to convert this into the MCP equivalent to show here without revealing personal data too much. So this is the screenshot that you get to see. Roots and sampling I'm going to skip over a little bit, but the idea, because the crowd is completely unfamiliar with MCP, which is why I'm going to skip over these things a little bit. But the idea is with roots is that, so for example, the Git MCP server right now only works in the directory that you started with. And this is really sucky from a UX point of view. Like, this is the definition of the MCP server for Git. This is how you define it in the Cloud Desktop thing. And you have to specify the directory, which is really sucky, right? So roots actually allows you to avoid that specification. The client will decide that, okay, this is the root. To think about it in terms of LSP, you start a Rust project. You don't need to say, here is where my Rust project is. The editor knows. And the editor then starts the LSP server in the right Rust project with the right settings, right? Same for Clojure, same for anything else. Sampling is something that's defined in the MCP server as a way for the server to talk to the LLM. They call it sampling because essentially the server is saying, please sample the output of this auto-completion engine that exists and give me some auto-completion for this particular request. In the protocol, the server is allowed to ask for models as well. So the server is allowed to say, I would prefer if you use Claude Sonnet 3.7 for this. And then the host can decide to like either honor or not honor that. But the idea is that you can use that for different things. Like you can, if you have a simple convert this text into this JSON format, then you can do that using a very simple instruct model, right? Which is running locally. But if you have a much more complicated task, create an entire business plan for me using the data in this SQLite database, then you would want to use a more powerful LLM like say maybe 3.7 or 4 now. Okay, finally we get to MCP Clojure SDK. Here are some resources about it. How much time do we have? Okay, we have some. Okay, here are some resources about it. I would actually like to really rush through it. There is a QR code in the end where all of this is available. You can just look at that. Clojure I loved using for this particular problem because the hard part about using something like JSON RPC is testing. And core.async just makes it so simple. So the implementation internally uses core.async for doing the management of messages. And now I can actually test on the REPL as I'm developing a server. So for example, this is essentially me saying, okay, initialize the server, then the server responding by saying, okay, I'm initialized, then me saying that, okay, get me this prompt, learn from top post this week, then the server responding below saying, okay, here is the prompt, here is the prompt, and so on and so forth. So this kind of testing is like straightforward to do on the REPL, which is delightful. I don't know how people in other languages are doing it. When I spoke to somebody, they were actually just restarting Claude Desktop every time. So creating the Python server, then putting it in the thing, and then restarting Claude Desktop, then restarting it again, then restarting it again, and I was like, this is stupid. So yeah. It's declarative and data driven, which is great. So I'm using Eden, for example, for separating code and data. I won't talk much about this because we already saw a bunch of it in the previous talk, but it lets me do things like, I don't have to do this complex. Like if you look at any of the other languages SDKs, they are very, very complex ways to take a JSON map and convert it into data. Here, it's a single step. And I think this is really underappreciated, but JVMs are great for long-running performance servers. And that is the problem space, essentially. And we should be leaning much more into this. The idea is that when we have complicated hosts, we are going to have a bunch of parallel requests happening. And the JVM is absolutely perfect for it, much better than maybe Node or Python would be at such problems. Here is my request to Clojure devs. If you are going to take some ideas away from this talk, the AI world is like really moving ahead in Python and TypeScript. I think almost all the people who work in AI are Python developers. And we desperately need basic libraries for the Gen AI world in Clojure. We can't rely on Java. They are in the same boat as us. I don't think anybody is working in that community also on these problems. What do we need? We need a light LLM equivalent. Light LLM, if you do not know, is a Python library which can interface with every model out there in the world at the moment, as far as I'm aware. And we really need this because then it will allow us to build applications which can talk to different models through a unified API interface. We don't have this right now. If anybody is working on this, please reach out to me. We can work on it together. We need an eval story. Evals is the way that you do testing in the Gen AI world. There is no way that you do testing in the Gen AI world for Clojure at the moment that I'm aware of. Again, if you're aware of something, please let me know. But this is really, really important. And I feel that Clojure core async flow would be an amazing fit for this problem. We need starter kits. There is the Humble UI project for building desktop applications. It would be amazing if people can like build examples of how different applications can be built in Humble UI and make it available as starter templates for people, because all of this is going to be UX innovation. Right now, the majority change that the AI world is going to bring about is in the UX part of it, not in the other parts of it. And we really need people who are UX enthusiasts to like step up and provide some templates for the rest of us, people who don't know what this is. And a bunch of other ideas are there. We don't have a sandboxing solution for Java or Clojure, as far as I'm aware. We don't have a great CUDA story. I don't know what the Wasm story is. So I would love to talk about these things. I think these are critical problems, and we need to be working on some part of these problems if you don't want to be left behind. So recap, there's a giant to-do list that I have in the project. I would love to have Babashka support. I would love to have GraalVM support for the tiny hosts that I'm building. I would love to support other protocols. There's a protocol called A2A, agent to agent, which Google has come up with, which seems like a fine protocol to me on the basic reading that I've done. There are other file formats. .af is agent file, which saves the state of a running AI agent. And I would love to like do a little bit of work there also. Again, MCP, or rather the way to think about AI applications, is presentational and bidirectional. By presentational, what we mean is that right now, if you think about it, you have Claude Desktop, which is a chat box. You have Cursor, which is a coding agent. You have a few terminal agents like Claude Code or Aider. But other than that, nobody has ever really thought about the UX of these things that I'm aware of, right? I feel you could have a better presentation software. You could have a better Excel software. You could have better, I don't know, anything else, browser. All of these things are all UX related things where agents will play a huge role. For example, right now I can't even run two coding agents in parallel on the same code, on the same database, because they'll clobber each other. But that would be such a great thing to have, because these tasks take time. So it would be so great to fire two tasks in parallel and have them do the change in the right way. And then maybe we need a better Git for that. I don't know, right? So, and bidirectional, meaning that the content is the king. We should be thinking about the content. So in a Claude Desktop, the chat conversation is the content. When you're doing Google Docs, the doc is the content. When you're writing code, the code is the content, right? It's actually the content that we have to think about, not everything else. So these applications should highlight the content and should be working more around it, and that's what something like MCP enables. And there's just so much more here. Thank you. That's my time.